In the heart of West Africa, a revolution is underway. But this time, it's not being televised, it's being buried. Captain Ibrahim Traore, the young and defiant president of Burkina Faso, has become a thorn in the side of Western powers. Ever since taking control through a military-led uprising in 2022, Traore has made one thing crystal clear. His country will no longer be a pawn in someone else's game. What's unfolding in Burkina Faso is not just a local power shift, it's a direct challenge to the Western world order, and that's exactly why many believe the West wants Traore out. 1. Challenging neo-colonial interests. Burkina Faso was once part of French West Africa, and France, like other former colonial powers, never really left. Through military agreements, mining contracts, and economic leverage via the CFA franc, France and other Western interests have maintained quiet control over their former colonies. But Traore has boldly severed ties with France, ordering the withdrawal of French troops, ending military cooperation, and even demanding the closure of French institutions. To many in the West, this wasn't just a slap in the face, it was a threat to their regional influence. The message from Traore was loud and clear. Africa must control Africa. 2. Expelling French troops and welcoming new partners. Since the 2010s, the French military had been stationed in Burkina Faso under the guise of fighting terrorism. However, many locals viewed this presence as ineffective, if not suspicious. Despite Western military aid, jihadist violence worsened, displacing over 2 million people. Traore's response? Kick the French out. In early 2023, he terminated military agreements with France and expelled its troops, accusing them of exploiting the crisis to maintain dominance. Instead, Burkina Faso began exploring alternative alliances, notably with Russia, Turkey, and China, nations with less colonial baggage and more interest in mutual respect, at least on the surface. The West was rattled, not just because they lost a base of operations, but because Traore had signaled a multipolar future, one that threatens Western hegemony. 3. Nationalizing resources and canceling colonial-era contracts. Burkina Faso is rich in gold, manganese, zinc, and other minerals. But for decades, these resources were largely controlled by foreign companies, many of them Western. These corporations extracted billions in profit while the country remained among the poorest in the world. Under Traore, this changed fast. In 2024, the Burkinabe government revoked several mining licenses and began a process to renegotiate or cancel unfair contracts. He's also pushed for greater state control over natural resources, echoing revolutionary leaders like Thomas Sankara before him. These moves hit Western business interests directly and painfully. Traore was no longer just a political nuisance. He was bad for business. 4. The land reform that shocked the world. In February 2025, Traore made his most dramatic move yet, declaring that all land in Burkina Faso now belongs to the state. Under the new law, the government leases land to users for up to 99 years, ending the chaotic patchwork of customary and undocumented ownership. While this may seem like an internal policy, it has major implications for foreign investors and agribusinesses, many of whom had quietly acquired large land tracts. Traore's reform strips them of permanent control and redistributes power back to the people, or so his government claims. To the West, this reform sets a dangerous precedent. A poor country acting independently, dismantling the capitalist blueprint imposed upon it. 5. Inspiring other African nations. Perhaps the biggest threat Traore poses to the West isn't military or economic, it's ideological. Young, fearless, and fiercely independent, Traore is quickly becoming a symbol of African resistance. His fiery speeches about sovereignty, justice, and dignity echo across the Sahel and beyond. In countries like Mali, Niger, and even South Africa, activists and politicians are citing Burkina Faso's model as one to follow. This Pan-Africanist revival, reminiscent of the 1960s liberation era, has the potential to unravel decades of carefully constructed Western influence across the continent. If Traore succeeds, others may follow, and the empire built on African exploitation could begin to crumble. 6. A media blackout and disinformation campaign. Strangely, while major Western media outlets are quick to report on leadership changes, coups, or crises elsewhere, Traore's reforms have received minimal coverage. When he does make headlines, it's often negative: authoritarian leader, populist strongman, or a threat to stability. This framing is part of a broader disinformation campaign that seeks to delegitimize his government and scare off investors. Western-backed NGOs and opposition figures have also been accused of receiving external funding to destabilize his administration, though hard evidence is elusive. Still, the pattern is familiar: isolate, demonize, and destabilize, a playbook used before in countries that challenge Western dominance. 7. The War on Terror as a pretext. The so-called War on Terror has long been used by Western powers to justify military operations in Africa. Burkina Faso, plagued by jihadist groups, was a key front in this campaign. Traore has accused the West of exaggerating the threat and using it as a cover for control. Since his government began working with local defense groups and regional alliances, without foreign troops, terrorist attacks have decreased in some areas, according to local reports. This success undercuts the narrative that only the West can protect African nations from terror. It also raises uncomfortable questions. Was the war on terror in the Sahel partly a smokescreen for geopolitical interests? 8. He won't play the IMF game. Another reason Traore is unwelcome in certain circles is his resistance to the International Monetary Fund, IMF, and World Bank model. Rather than drowning in debt traps or accepting structural adjustment programs that gut public services, Traore has expressed interest in alternative financial models, including regional development banks, resource-backed lending, and domestic revenue generation through state enterprises. This refusal to play by Washington's economic rules is not just inconvenient, it's subversive. Whether one agrees with all of his methods or not, one thing is certain: Ibrahim Traore represents a seismic shift in how post-colonial nations relate to the world. For the first time in decades, a leader from a small, impoverished country is dictating terms to the global powers, not the other way around. He's not asking for permission. He's not waiting for aid. He's not bowing to institutions built without Africa's consent. And that, more than anything, is why some in the West want him out. Because Traore isn't just leading Burkina Faso. He's lighting a fire that could sweep across an entire continent.